Sally?
Yeah. We're now live, Chair.
Lovely, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. I don't know what the computer is doing funny things at the moment. Hello?
We can hear you, Councillor Haji Nicolau.
Can you hear me? Because actually the computer is doing funny things. I have lost all pictures here. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh,
yes.
Brilliant. Okay, that's fine. Right, as I said before, good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Budget Scrutiny Panel for the Charnwood Borough Council. Please note that this virtual meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the Openness of Local Government Bodies regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. I will be really grateful if everybody switches off mobile phones and have actually an environment which is distraction-free. Can we make sure actually that we have switched off or move all these smart speakers of the new generation, Alexa, Siri, Cortana, etc., because these devices can record conversations, and this may be a breach of the GDPR. As you know by now, members will need to introduce themselves in a virtual meeting and state their name and confirm that they can see and hear the proceedings. Also, I'm sure you're aware about the function raise hand if you want actually to speak. So I will ask each member to verbally confirm that they are present and they can see and hear the proceedings. So I will start with Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bolton here. I confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Draycott.
Thank you. I confirm I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm I can both see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris. Councillor Harris.
Can you hear? Yes, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, can see and hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons.
Yes, I can confirm I can see and hear.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Seaton.
Can confirm that I can see and hear. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Angel.
Can confirm and hear you and see you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll go through the officers who are in the meeting, and I will start with Mr. Jackson. Mr. Jackson? Mr. Simon Jackson?
Hello. Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear proceedings, even if I
saw you.
mute, but...
Thank you. Mr. Justin Henry?
Thank you, Chair. I can both see and hear you.
Thank you. Mrs. Leslie Tansey?
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Mr. Adrian Ward?
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay?
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear.
Lovely, thank you. And Mrs. Sally Watson?
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see.
And Mrs. Nikki Conway?
Thank you, Chair. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you so much. Right, I will proceed with item 1, apologies. Mrs. Conway confirmed that there are no apologies for the meeting today. Is that true,
Yes,
Mrs. Conway?
I can confirm there are no apologies.
Thank you. Going to item 2, minutes from the previous meeting. Now, I hope that you all had the time to look into the minutes. And is anybody who didn't have the time to look into the minutes? Okay. So I will ask each member to confirm verbally that they are content to receive and note the minutes. I will start with Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm content to receive and confirm the minutes.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I believe there's Councillor Parsons wishes to speak, and I think also Councillor Draycott may have wanted to speak. Before
That's fine.
we go through confirming the
Sorry,
minutes.
Chair, I don't need to speak. My apologies. I don't need to say anything at this point. My apologies.
So, Councillor Draycott, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I did read the minutes and there was a lot of work there, which is appreciated. And a lot of the answers to the questions we raised and information requested, we've all received. But there's 2 matters outstanding. I don't know whether it's here on the minutes or when we discuss the panel's findings that I need to raise those 2 matters. Just for the record, the first one was that I did ask for the numbers of jobs or posts or people that would lose their positions. We've not had that figure from the budget.
So,
and
sorry,
the other,
I missed that. The number of what? Sorry.
the
Councillor.
number of posts or jobs, whichever you want to call it, or positions that have been lost because of the budget proposals.
Yeah.
That's the first. And the other matter I raised was the fact that it was to do also with the leisure centre, but it's mainly the town hall, where people had paid. And at the town hall, it's people who paid for performances and were asked in March last year, did they want a refund or it being credited? What happens now when people want a refund? I still haven't got an answer to that. I actually went back to the town hall in December, reminding them that, and this is a personal interest, because I brought tickets for a neighbour who didn't have IT and I brought them for them. They now want a refund. So I contacted the town hall asking for a refund. They said they can't do a refund because the money is credited and that's where it stays. So I want some answers. If members of the public now want refunds from the town hall or the leisure centre, how do they get those refunds, Chair? Because I think they're entitled to it. Thank you. There was those 2 points that have still not been answered. So wherever you think it's appropriate, could they be taken?
Just to understand, Councillor Draycott, you're talking about events which were booked and actually did not take place because of the COVID situation.
Yes. That everybody was contacted March, April time, asking did they want a refund? This is the town hall, or did they want to credit the money for a future performance?
Yes.
Now,
yeah.
Now, if somebody's changed their mind and are asking for a refund from the town hall, they're being told they can't have a refund.
So you see, you mean actually that originally a member of the public agreed actually to attend actually the show when it happens and change their mind, or I'm a bit confused here.
No, they agreed that the town hall keep the money, hoping there was going to be a future performance.
Yeah,
you know, and it would only be a matter of months, right? But now we're over 9-10 months later. Some people are wanting refunds, and I'm asking for the town hall to address that. And at the moment, they're saying they cannot issue refunds.
Okay, now I understand. Thank you very much.
Thank So where we want to take this, I'm entirely in your hands, Chair.
Yeah, I will need to ask some advice on this matter, because these 2 points actually, I remember you making actually the point about the leisure center, but
Yeah.
I felt that that was addressed in a paragraph in page 17.
Yes, it is. The
draft
leisure
document.
centre has been addressed. It's the town hall now that is still outstanding.
All right. May I ask the advice of Ms. Conway in this matter, because this actually an issue which we can highlight actually as correction or addition to the previous minutes.
So through you, Chair, the deletion of vacant posts or vacant hours was a request, and it's on page 10 of the agenda. So it was a request for information from heads of service,
yes,
or strategic directors, and that answer hasn't actually been provided to the members of the panel. Regarding the town hall, I've had a look at what the response was that you were given by the head of service, which says that they'll be offered a credit to the customer's account, or if requested, a refund. So I'm not quite sure how you wish to handle that item, that matter, because it feels to me, Councillor Draycott, that you may be asking a new question, in that the original question has been responded to. I can see that Justin Henry would like to come in and have a word about that, so I will defer to him.
Thank you, Nikki, and through you, Chair. Councillor Draycott, if you will allow me, I'm quite happy to pick this up and come back to you in short order with an answer, an investigation as to what happens now.
Yeah.
I can't speak to the situation currently, but I'm quite happy to take that away with me and come back to you in short order with an answer, which we can perhaps circulate to other members on this panel. So if you're satisfied with that, please allow me to do that.
Yeah, that's very helpful, and if it'll be in the minutes, so that's fine as a reference. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Henry. So we continue actually with the confirmation of the minutes, and I will go to Councillor Hamilton. Councillor?
I have no comment to make, sorry. Oh, sorry, yes, I received and accept these minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
Yes, I confirm the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons?
Yes, I note the minutes.
Thank you. And Councillor Seaton? Councillor? Brenda?
I'm on a different view all of a sudden, and I couldn't find my mute button. It changed from blue to another colour. I confirm the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Actually, we can see half of your face at the moment. So if
That's the best half.
Oh, okay. Right.
I don't want to reveal all of it.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'm pleased actually just to confirm the outcome of the previous minutes with the we agree actually that one of the questions by Councillor Draycott has already been addressed, and
that one is still outstanding.
Sorry?
That one is still outstanding.
Yeah, and one is still outstanding about the town hall refunds, and this will be addressed. The refunds by the town hall?
No, the one outstanding is the jobs.
Oh.
Posts, the numbers.
But I felt that that was addressed actually.
No, we asked for information about how many jobs would be lost in this budget or posts. We haven't had that information yet. The other issue, the town hall, that's been picked up by Mr. Henry, being respectful.
Mr. Henry.
So he's dealing with that,
Okay.
Yes.
So, right, going to the number of posts which we expect to be lost, how can we address this in your opinion? Who is actually the best person to give us this information?
Simon Jackson, I would have thought, Chair.
Mr. Jackson?
Yeah, so apologies for not answering this. There is a limit to what we can do. So there's a couple of elements to the amounts that are savings in the budget. So there are a number of vacant hours. So situations where potentially people were working 5 days a week and they've taken phased retirement and are now only working 3 days a week. So there's quite a few areas like that. We can provide a sort of a list of those hours, I believe, from memory of the records we've got. There are also some other areas where there are management restructures which haven't started yet, so it is going to be a bit more difficult to provide detail in those areas because there's still an HR process to run through. So whether those do end up being post lost or half post, it's quite difficult to assess. So we'll have to have a look at what's been proposed, and try and correlate those details to those numbers. But in that area, and also in the case of essential car user, which is within the budget, they're all subject to HR processes. So to that extent, they are at some level estimates at this stage. But we'll have a look at what records we've got and see what we are able to provide in terms of that detail. But they are ongoing HR processes, so we'll have to provide that caveat.
Right.
So through
Thank you,
you,
Mr.
Chair,
Jackson.
what I would like to clarify with the panel is whether that information is required before before this report goes to the Scrutiny Commission, because you've got 3 days basically for that information. It's whether Councillor Draycott considers that information and the rest of the panel considers that information is critical to the recommendations in the panel report.
Through you, Chair, if I may just interject for a moment, and in support of, and in addition to what my colleague Simon Jackson has just stated, there are a number of issues within the establishment in terms of actually determining what these service reviews might reveal, but we can't prejudge, as Simon has already stated, what the HR consultation process will actually throw up, what it will kick out, and what the actual final number will actually arrive at from that perspective. To disclose any of that in the first instance too early would not only be illegal because it's exempt information under law, but it would also be morally incorrect because we're not actually through the processes, and it would be prejudging a process before it's actually been completed. So unfortunately, we don't have a lot of answers yet at this point, and we have to work very quickly to go ahead and arrive at those answers. But certainly, as soon as we do have those, we're quite happy to bring those back. I don't think that we would be able to go ahead and shed any light or pearls of wisdom in the space of a couple of weeks when there are still so many questions that we need to answer and so many investigations we need to undertake and so many consultations, for that matter, that we need to undertake. So it is a very complicated multivariate problem.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Councillor Draycott, are you satisfied with this response so far?
Yes, Chair. I can understand some of the reasons, but I would have thought that there could have been some sort of figure given. If I remember the budget paper itself, there were definite posts that were highlighted in the report. I think as long as it's in the minutes that we have discussed this matter and taken on board the comments by the officers, and at some stage, even when this panel has closed and done its job, that some report is produced on the actual results of loss of posts and the outcome of any of the departmental reviews, for example. I know we get the big ones, but we don't get the whole picture normally. So if that information later in the year can be provided, that would be great. And I think that would be helpful for the panel next year with other things to develop for next year's budget. So if that's okay, Chair, I'm happy with that.
Right. Thank you very much, Councillor Draycott. Now, the question is whether actually we are content to incorporate the comments by Councillor Draycott actually in these minutes. And I'm not going to go through a proper vote in this time, but if there is any disagreement for the incorporation of these comments in the minutes, please raise your hand. Okay, I take actually you're happy to incorporate this in the minutes, and so I will proceed with the final stage of the approval of the previous minutes. And I will say that actually we have already approved, most councillors have approved their previous minutes. So feel actually the minutes are approved with the addition of Councillor Draycott's comments. Is this all right? Great. So we can proceed now with the item 3, which is disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. I have not received anything in this item, so I assume nobody has any pecuniary or personal interest. So let's proceed with item 4. I would like to know whether any of the members of the panel are under the party whip for any of the items. If you are under the party whip, can you please raise your hand? Right, so I assume nobody is under the party whip. Item 5 is questions under other committee procedures 1117. And I'm not aware of any questions being submitted. So we proceed with item 6, draft budget 21-22 amendments. And I will kindly ask Mr. Jackson to provide us an update. Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. So since we last met, we've actually had the settlement from government for this year, and I'm able to tell you a little bit more of the detail around that and what happened. So I just run down the list of our major sources of funding and where we've got to. So the first one is council tax. So in the settlement, the government allowed us to increase council tax by a maximum of either 2% or £5. So the £5 wasn't clear at the time we drafted the budget. So that enables us to increase the council tax by a little bit more. That's, to some extent, that's offset by the growth in council tax base, which wasn't quite as significant as we anticipated. So, but the net of that is we're about 60,000 ahead of what we had in the draft budget. We also received in the settlement £168,000 of revenue support grant, against which we'd budgeted nothing. So that was us being ahead of the game there. In terms of new homes bonus, unfortunately, this is much less good news. So as we sort of semi-guessed, we only got 2 years worth of legacy payments, and last year's one-off award we didn't get, but we did get another one-off for this current year, for 21-22. So the impact of that is, in the draft budget we had £4.3 million, and we're actually due to receive £3 million. So that's 1.3 million short on new homes bonus. In terms of business rate retention, the numbers the government provided to us are identical to the last year, which would sort of imply that it was identical to the last year, and that would imply that we're going to achieve business rates retention in line with the budget, though it is a very complicated area, and there's the precise number we will not be able to determine until we've completed what's called the NNDR1 return to government. So we didn't actually get what that return, the detail of what was required in that return until this week. So that's all going, that'll all have to be calculated, and there's also a process whereby Capita need to do some software amendments to reflect that form within the system to enable us to do the calculation. So that's if you take my word for it, that's all a bit complicated, but given the core numbers are the same, at the moment we're assuming that's going to come out as per the budget. The other bit of good news here, there is something called the Lower Tier Services Grant. That's a new one-off we've got, and that's worth 600. That was worth 620,000. So when you put all those together, we are 0.44, so between 0.4 and 0.5 million pounds down on what we had in the draft budget. So that's that bit. We've also inevitably looked at being able to refine some of the expenditure projections. So the first one is that in terms of salaries, we're likely to be around about £250,000 better off, and that's principally because the Chancellor announced a public sector pay freeze. Our pay isn't actually part of what the Chancellor announced there, but our pay does track very much other public sector workers. So on that basis, we're probably going to be about £250,000 better off versus a budget. There's some additional insurance costs we will incur around about 100,000, which is mainly to do with cyber insurance, which we feel we now need to have. And then that's offset by, we've revisited the homeless provision, and there's a recalculation there that we've done. So if you add all those things up together, that gives us a net position on the budget in terms of funding and also expenditure of around about £250,000 worse off than how we started out. A couple of other things that I've got no numbers against, but should be favourable for us. So the first is an extension of the sales fees and charges compensation scheme. So that is current this year, and that's going to extend into the first quarter of 2021-22. We don't know how that's going to work, but assuming that our income is down due to COVID, and that is actually what's in this draft budget, there will be some compensation for that. So not sure how much, but I'm certainly assuming that would be upside on the number I'm quoting. And also, and maybe if there's any subsequent questions around this, but based on the commercial property acquisitions that we've managed to make to date, it's likely there'll be some upside on the commercial income line as well. And I can't remember whether we spoke about it last time. We probably did, but also we're able to hope to get some money from the vaccination centre. So I think formally that's due to, I think the agreement only takes us along till March, but it seems very difficult to imagine that operation of that centre won't continue at least into the sort of the autumn of next year. So there is some upside there. And then just as a sort of note on presentation, what we're intending to do is maybe expand, even if it's just a one-off in a separate table. So expand that commercial income to include the sort of net effect and showing the offset of the MRP and interest ticket in that. So there'll be a bit of an expanded presentation in the final budget. So fully intending the net impact will be in line with what's in the draft budget, but there may be, I think based on where we are, there's some scope to potentially increase that budget line, but certainly we'll be showing how that sort of fits together on a net basis with the MRP and the interest. So that's where we are. So again, but without knowing those numbers, what our calculations are at the moment, we're about £250,000 down. Now, there is some good news in that we've also got unbudgeted some additional COVID funding. So there is tranche 5 COVID funding, and that was announced within the autumn statement. It's not part of the settlement, but it was announced. So it's a one-off. So we are due to get about £800,000 of additional COVID funding, which we hadn't budgeted for. And then there is also a scheme for irrecoverable local tax losses. So that's the government and again, I've got no detail on how this is going to work, but basically any bad debts for council tax or business rates that we have incurred due to COVID, or how, and again, how we would ascertain that, I'm not clear, but there is a possibility that we will get some additional funding this year through that route, which means that if you take all these things in the round, although the budget position is looking a little less favourable, given this one-off COVID funding, that will mean that our projected reserves at 31st of March 2022, all other things being equal, which of course they won't be, but based on those numbers, that would leave our general fund working balance at around 2.6 million, rather than a little over 2 million, which you will have seen in the draft budget report. So just in summary, so the funding position is below the draft budget levels, but the one-off COVID funding offsets that. It's worth looking at worth looking at our funding. So new homes bonus could be only £1 million next year compared to 3 million this year, assuming that the scheme rolls forward. The lower tier services grant is only a one-off. The revenue support grant is a bit of a zombie grant, actually. That was due to be phased out a couple of years ago. It still limps on, but that could be a one-off. The COVID funding is certainly a one-off. So so the next iteration of the MTFS, which we'll be bringing forward in February to Cabinet and then Council, is going to be, unfortunately, have to be very much based on guesswork for the funding. But it's clearly our position is quite brittle given the element of the substantial element of one-off funding. So next year, it's a bit of a sticking plaster budget. It looks actually okay. But going forward, it's tricky. So certainly in terms of addressing our financial situation, both the previously identified structural issues plus the COVID issues, which we hopefully are going to recover from. But again, your guesses will be as good as mine in terms of vaccine rollout, new variant COVID, etc., etc. So that's where we are compared to the draft budget. I don't know whether Councillor Barclay or Leslie would like to comment in addition to that, but that's clearly happy if there's any questions on that to try and answer those.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That was very informative. I would like to invite now members of the panel to ask questions. Can I ask actually...
Through you, Chair, I believe Councillor Barclay would like to have
I missed that.
A comment. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Barclay, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Well, Simon Jackson's outlined the position. So at the end of 2021 or going into 2022, our reserves will be at 2.6 million. There are many variables. You can see the funding that we've received, the COVID grants and everything else, which are one-off 800,000, and the lower tier of 617,000 have assisted. We still have work to do, and we will be doing it during this year, because given what Simon Jackson has said with the reduction of the or virtual disappearance of the new home bonus, we will have to increase income, and we already have done that through commercial acquisitions. I think roughly after we've allowed for MRP and everything else, I think a guesstimate we've probably got an extra 600,000 there. There are ways that we could possibly continue to gain income in that way, but certainly next year we're going to be fine. We have a lot of work to do during the next year, and happy to try and answer any questions, but all is not all is far from lost, and we have hope for the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to make sure, because you see, Councillor Barclay, you were not in my running order. Apologies. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in connection to these two addresses so far?
This hands up, Chair. Blue hands.
Oh, there are no blue in my computer, but actually now I see. I'm not sure which one actually came first, because I have Councillor Draco,
Councillor Bolton was first.
Oh, Councillor sorry. The hands in my computer are yellow and they're actually lost in the background. So Councillor Bolton, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's disappointing to hear about the £1.3 million shortfall in the new homes bonus and the fact that that is likely to continue into the future. It's good news about, COVID funding, etc. But COVID funding is likely to be a one-off. And I think I've probably got two questions. The first one is, and I think, Simon, you may have answered this to some extent already. What other uncertainties are we facing in 21-22? And what are we planning to do in future years to make up for the shortfall in the new homes bonus?
That was one question. Are you going to ask the second question at the same
I did.
time?
I asked both of them.
Okay.
I asked two questions, Chair.
Sorry, did I miss something? The computer is playing today. The one question was, can you repeat the second question? Sorry.
Well, my first question was about what other uncertainties there are. And my second question was, what are we planning to do in the future to make up for the potential shortfall in the new homes bonus?
Okay, sorry about that. I missed the. Thank you, Councillor Bolton.
Would you like me to try and answer those, Chair?
Mr. Jackson, yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, so in terms of uncertainties, I guess the big one we've got is COVID inevitably and the impact on our income stream. So we really don't know. I mean, that's been very significant, obviously, this year. I think, trying to remember off the top of my head, but I think one way or another, we were about £2+ million down in income. Clearly things that are very important to us in income terms, such as the pantomime, we're obviously hoping and anticipating next year that we will be able to run the pantomime as normal and generate all that income. But that's still the way I'm betting. But obviously the way this pandemic is progressing is very, very difficult to assess that. So certainly income will be one area. The other area I would pick out is the supported living cost, which I think we've highlighted and discussed before. I think left other things being equal, that will increase and that will be bad news for us. I think what we're very much hoping is that there's going to be some relief via government with some sort of change of rules, really, or possibly they might even give us some extra money to reflect the situation. I think that will be unlikely, but we are hoping that there would be a change of rules around potentially people being identified as vulnerable, which would enable us to claim a lot more money back, or potentially the main providers in the borough achieving registered provider status, which would also solve our problem. So that there is clearly some large uncertainties there. What are we going to do about new homes bonus? I think it is, I know, or I've certainly read the Treasury doesn't like the new homes bonus scheme and doesn't believe it's been effective in bringing forward development, which was allegedly the idea of it. I'm not super convinced that was completely the idea, but that's what was advertised. So I do think new homes bonus will disappear, maybe with just the final legacy payment that we are due next year. Against that, the government may introduce some different type of scheme to encourage development within authorities. If that's the case, we don't know about that, and that's all part of the now renamed Fair Funding Review, which again we do hope is going to come along next year. But it's called something else, but it's essentially the same thing. What are we going to do about it? I think sort of both myself and maybe Councillor Barclay have alluded to this, but we've been through a sort of a bit of a service review process. We're looking at a number of areas, so commercialisation, large contracts, staff terms and conditions. So we've started that process. transformation and efficiency will be a big part of what we're doing, and just going through the whole of our service portfolio, seeking to see where we can reduce costs or increase income and generally find efficiency. And that's a piece of work which will come to a head, if you like, next autumn, but it's something that we'll be looking to do on an ongoing basis. We have got an internal management tool called the MTFS tracker, which is where we seek to identify savings and crystallize them. And in the next iteration of the MTFS, I do hope that I'll be able to put together at least an outline plan of where savings may be achieved. And what we'll be looking to do over the coming year is go through that list and seek to crystallize those and firm those up. So that's the process we're going through. But again, the fact that we won't set the budget to then breathe a big sigh of relief and do nothing for 6 or 8 months. We'll be we'll be looking to work through this as soon as we can, resources permitting, given potentially the ongoing COVID situation.
Thank you for that, Simon. I mean, we're clearly living in very, very uncertain times at the moment, but thank you for your comments, and I'm happy now to pass on to the next councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson and Councillor Bolton. I'm not 100% sure who is next in the queue. Is this Councillor Draycott?
Yes, I was after Jill. Yes.
Sorry, I need some help here because actually I don't really have the order. So, Councillor Draycott, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I think first of all, as a panel, we should say thank you to Simon and the finance officers, because I certainly wouldn't like to be doing this job. Extremely difficult. We're not in good times, but we all want things to succeed between us. Some of the changes that have come out that we've been told about are disappointing. I've got 3 questions, Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
First one at the beginning regarding the council tax figures, 2% or £5. How does the £5 work? Because I thought it was 5%. So, and in the budget report we had at the last meeting, I'm sure it was talking about 5%. So what is the council tax figure are we looking at then to propose to Cabinet and to the Budget Council meeting? Do we know that at the moment?
If I may try and answer that one, Chair, this is obviously, it obviously will go to Cabinet and then to Council. And Councillor Barclay must immediately correct me if he's going to disagree here. But the way it works is that the government's allowed that we had it was a 2% assumed. I can't recall precisely. I'm not quite sure what the 5% might have been in the draft budget, but in the draft budget assumed a 2% increase in council tax, which historically has been the upper limit of what we're able to increase council tax by without holding a referendum. So a referendum would be, I don't know, might cost us £100,000 with no guarantee of actually being successful in that. So we've obviously adopted a strategy of increasing council tax up to that referendum limit. In common with the last 2 or 3 years, the government to help low council tax councils, of which we are one, it's allowed the greater of either 2% or £5 on the preset for district councils. And given we are a low council tax area, the £5 is greater than the 2%. So what will happen is that we will, and just to add to the complexity, really, the government takes into account the Loughborough special area in looking at that capping limit. So what we'll be looking to do is increase council tax for the Loughborough special area by 2%, and then we'll calculate the main borough precept increase, having allowed for that. So that will probably result in a borough council increase precept of around about £3.84. And sorry, I'm referring to Band D properties there. So that's what I fully anticipate will be brought forward to Cabinet and Council in due course.
So just to follow that one through, does that mean that the budget for the Loughborough special rates, that there'll be some extra money in that budget?
I'm afraid not. The budget for the Loughborough special rate did include that, did assume that 2% increase.
Okay.
So there's no there's no additional in there, I'm afraid.
Okay, yeah, understood. Thank you for that. Second question, if we end up then with about £250,000 worse off than we were hoping, does that mean that the B list that was referred to in the budget paper at the last meeting, is that going to be actioned now? How, you know, is there going to be a relook at where those savings have to come from? And presumably, am I right? I might be answering my own question, but that information will go to the cabinet meeting then. Is that the answer to that?
I mean, what happens now is, so again, Councillor Barclay must correct me if I'm wrong, but just bear with me a moment. Sorry, we've got a hunger issue with the family. Dear, oh dear. Right, sorry about that. Yeah, so so I think where we are with the budget is that we won't need to go into the B list. I think where we are is that we're given the one-off COVID funding and the looking at the settlement and the COVID funding in the round, we'll be able to basically move forward on the basis of the draft budget presented. So I think that's what we'll be able to do. So that means we'll be able to have as I sort of said before, really, we will need to have a look at efficiencies and savings and additional income generation going forward. What we'll be able to do is look in a slightly more controlled way, rather than having to sort of sit down this week, next week, and make some rapid decisions. So there won't be, I don't think we'll be looking to propose any significant additional savings in the final budget. As I mentioned, there may be one or two recalculations and additional savings and pressures just arising from refining the numbers as we would always do between one iteration of the budget or another, but wouldn't anticipate any significant additional savings at this time.
Okay, thank you for that. And then my final question, it is disappointing that the new homes bonus has been cut by so much. I just wonder how other councils, do we know how other councils have fared in Leicestershire regarding that? And I have been critical in the past about how this money has been used by Charnwood, because it's quite clearly, when it was introduced, it was to help new homes, new developments, to tackle some of the issues that arise from housing developments, but instead the council didn't use it for that. So I don't think we can really argue that it's being cut. However, in such times as we're in, I think that's quite mean at this time to be doing it this year. So it is disappointing. But I'd be interested to know, that's my third question, do we know how any of the other districts have managed with their new homes bonus?
We've got, so the details of the settlement is a public document. So we know, we can find out how each of the district councils have done. I had a little bit of a look. What's actually happened is the lower tier services grant that has been designed to again, it's not public, it's not explicitly acknowledged by the government, but it's generally regarded that grant is designed to offset the impact of new homes bonus. So in terms of that, that's why we did well on the lower tier services grant in Leicestershire. So we did particularly well on that. I think Blaby were the winners on that. They got 0.8 8 million compared to our 0.6, whereas most of us in Leicestershire were getting sort of 0.1, 0.2. And, if you compare us to, say, Oadby, where, there's obviously, the geographical nature of Oadby with no open space to speak of, they obviously, new homes bonus wasn't such a big thing for them. So their compensatory grant was rather limited. I do have to say, in fairness, although the new homes bonus was advertised as being, to support new development, it was realistically neither new nor a bonus, because what we gained in new homes bonus only ever compensated for our loss in revenue support grant. So if you were to go back 5 or 6 years, you would see that our revenue support grant used to be in the order of 3, 4, 5 million. I can't remember the precise figure, but it was certainly up at around that level. So as that was very much reduced and goes down to little or nothing, new homes bonus was just really that same money recycled. So that's all it. So there's obviously a distribution effect, but that's all that was really.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. I think is Councillor Parsons next, or Mr. Angel?
I think it's me, but I'll defer to Councillor Parsons.
No, it's all right. You see, if you are actually first in the queue, you have the floor.
No, I don't mind. I can wait.
It's all right, Councillor Parsons. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, you will be the first person ever, Mr. Angel, to defer to me. Mr. Jackson, just a couple of points. Can I just clarify with you some figures you mentioned in your pre sort of speech at the beginning? How much do you think we're getting for new homes bonus this year?
£3 million.
3. Okay, so that's against 4.289 in the budget.
Correct.
So that's about 1.289 down.
Yes.
Okay. Just really it's a slightly generic question then, just linking to with the one-off contribution that the business rate appeal adjustment made this year.
Yes.
And the reduction in the new homes bonus, which one presumes we will see next year. I know net out in the government spending that we've now got, you're thinking maybe only $250,000 down. Just going forward, the structural pressure now, in my view, is growing significantly on us. And I really just want to flag that. And it links to a point I want to make in the next section with our recommendations. And it's a point I've made a couple of times, and I just want to link the two. We've referenced, I know you're on the budget all the time, and I know that as a council, we're on the budget and savings all the time. But for us from Scrutiny, we've referenced in the recommendations to Cabinet that, and the way it's been worded in the recommendations, it just kind of says, we want you to know whatever the trigger points might be. We note there's trigger points for action, more decisive action. I'll get the wording up in a minute in the next section, and I'll just re-quote it. But I think we've just got to find a mechanism, because each time we lose a bit of money, I know it's only $250,000 here, and it's perhaps only 100,000 here, and it's a piece there, and it's we sort of absorb it in the melee of the complicated system that is our council finances. But we can't keep doing that forever. We've got to reach a point where we can't just keep slightly making the adjustment around the corner. There's got to be a trigger point which will require more drastic action by us. And we've sort of been slowly over the last few years arriving at that point, and the COVID situation and where we are now has accelerated that. And I need us somehow, for the purposes of Scrutiny, to have a point at which we trigger a different approach or a different view, or we trigger action, or we trigger something to address this problem of this continual sort of slicing. The analogy I've used in the past is that, we've been sitting there with the car on the drive, and every year we turn the engine over and say our car's running really well, but we're going to lose the wing mirrors this year, and we're going to lose the hub, and we're going to lose a wheel. And there's a point where it's no longer a car, and we need to address that. And I'm at that point now between here and my reflections in audit committee, where during next year, the monitoring of the finances, and I know you will be doing this, for us at Scrutiny, we need to have Cabinet tell us what the trigger point is where we might have to do something more dramatic or more drastic in terms of the scale we'll be facing potentially in 22-23.
Right. So if I may try and answer that, Chair, the trigger, it is very difficult. The trigger point will be, which won't be very early, but the trigger point will be when we get next year's settlement, because unfortunately I won't be able to do anything, I don't think, unless Leslie's got any better ideas. But unfortunately what we'll have to do is assume next year's settlement will be the same as this year's settlement in the round. And I think there's a comment in the draft budget report that's not because of any insight, it's just there's nothing else to go on. It may be that beforehand we start getting, we start getting information that enables us to read the runes, if you like, of what's coming our way. But I think we don't know yet. So it's probably going to be the summer at the earliest, and maybe into the autumn before we know anything more. So there's various things being proposed. So radical shake-up of the whole business rate system, which will be interesting. It's been quite heavily flagged, or has been in the past, that we'll be moving on to a 75% business rate retention system versus the 50% system we've got at the moment. But again,
Simon, sorry to interrupt you. If I can just reverse the question very slightly, that perhaps might give you a sense of what I'm after at some point. Last year, we got hit by the supported living to the tune of circa 600,000. Yeah. If we got hit this year by $250,000, and I know we're working on it to change the thing, and I understand there are other things, but just as an example, if we got hit by $250,000, we'd probably go, ouch, but absorb it somewhere, and we'd work our way. If we got information in 2 months' time saying you're going to get stung by £2 million on supported living, that wouldn't be a very serious issue for us. I'm trying to establish a point somewhere in that £250,000 to £2 million, a point at which we trigger a different view on what we're doing, because otherwise we're just sort of pushing things around. If it was £2 million, what would we do? As opposed to £250,000, we'd kind of lose it in a reserve here and a bit there and a bit there. But if it was £2 million tomorrow morning, that would require something more dramatic. I'm trying to get a handle on the point at which we at Scrutiny would need to intervene more directly with our guidance or our scrutiny or our recommendations back to Cabinet, at what point that happens. Because both of those scenarios could, and we'd come an hour and ouch at £250,000. But if we got hit by £2 million, that's serious. Where is the point at which we think? Is it a point at which our prediction makes the reserve drop below £2 million? Is it a point at which the budget deficit grows beyond £3 million and we can't fudge it anymore? What's the point? Can we crystallise a point where we need to be doing something more dramatic from our scrutiny perspective?
Chair, if I may, through you, I would address that. I think we've pretty much know that we've got a structural deficit of about 1.4 million. We're going to be addressing that going forward. I can't predict the future of what cuts are going to be, but we have reached a point where we do need to continually ongoing look before we are in the position to set the budget for 22-23 at making some fairly substantial income increases or reduction in costs. And that's exactly what we will do. The MTFS will highlight where we believe we are going. Any changes will come through Cabinet, and they will be available for all councillors to see, and any proposals, but it is going to be an ongoing process through the next 12 months to do that, to address the structural deficit that we face. Yeah, is it come to a point where our reserves fall below a certain level? To a certain extent it does. There isn't any element of complacency. We know that as far as we can tell, this time next year we'll have £2.6 million worth of reserves, which is not untold, but going forward to 22-23, unless we've addressed the structural deficit, we have not got limitless reserves. So the moment has arrived where we are very conscious of what we need to do, and we'll do it.
Are you happy, Councillor Parsons?
Move on, Chair.
Yeah, I'm happy to move on, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we go to Mr. Angel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I just ask through you, Simon Jackson, the 800,000 that we're getting as COVID relief, are there any costs likely to be associated with that?
Thank you. No, Mr. Angel. It's an unring-fenced grant. So we've had 4 lots of unring-fenced COVID funding to help us through the situation, and this is the tranche 5. So it is unring-fenced. There are no specific costs that go against this, although obviously the additional costs we are incurring, it is supposed to that obviously helps us cover those. But we hadn't budgeted for it. That a lot of the costs we've got, we are incurring costs around supporting the community hub. Also, there's it's less of an actual cash cost, but we're having lots of issues. There's lots of resource issues around the business grants and making those work as well. So basically, it's all there may be 1 or 2 bits and pieces that may arise, which we would have to cover through this funding. But basically, it's all extra for us. So very good news to that extent.
Thank you. And I'll just pick up on a point that Councillor Draycott made about the 5% increase in council tax. That is the figure that appears on agenda item 7 on page 13. I don't know where it came from, but we probably must have misunderstood what was being said at the last meeting. That's the only thing I can think.
Yeah.
Mr. Jackson?
Anyway, that's all.
Yes. Apologies. I don't think there's certainly from my point of view, never any intentional likelihood we would increase council tax by 5%. Maybe it's the confusion with the £5, which has come to pass. So apologies. I don't know quite why that confusion has arisen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Angel. Can I come back to the council tax issue, just for clarification? Absolutely right. We were with the impression of 5%. That was noted actually in the draft report. Possibly there was a confusion between the £5. But can you explain to me, is it 2% now the expected increase in council tax? 2%?
No. So on the Loughborough special, just to clarify that, so we do intend that will go up by, because of the way the calculations work, and we want to avoid issues, that will go up by 1.99%. On the main Loughborough precept, what we'll be looking to do is increase that to effectively £5. Well, it will be about £3.80, some number like that. So it will be above 2%. So
right. I'm sorry, Mr. Jackson. I'm a bit confused because we confuse percentages with raw numbers. Can we actually talk only percentages, please? The 2%.
It's what the government tells us. So it's the way the government tells us. So the idea is if our council tax was a lot higher, then 2% on our precept would be more than £5. But because we're a low tax area, our 2% on our precept is less than £5. So what we're doing is a calculation. So it'll probably work out at about 3.5%, something like that. But it will be the calculation. Now the government has said what it is, will be based on a £5 per band D precept, not a percentage. So we've got to do that. We've got to do that calculation. So that calculation is based on the council tax base, which we've now got, and looking at how that and the relative council tax bases of the borough as a whole and the Loughborough special area. So we have to work. Basically, what we have to do is work out what 2% of the Loughborough special area is, and then work out what the maximum council tax increase for the borough will be. And as I say, it'll work out at something like £3.84, which will be something like 3.3% when we actually do the final calculations. We'll be looking to do that pretty soon. I don't know whether I don't know whether Leslie knows whether we've started that exercise yet. I certainly imagine we've started looking at it, but whether we've got any figures yet, I'm not sure.
Just to bring it into perspective, that means that our precept per household bandy equivalent will rise by roughly 7p a week.
Yeah, you see, I every time I go out actually in the community, they're asking me about the percentage increase. And actually, when we go with the raw numbers, we say actually £1, £5, £3, and then people want to know actually what is the percentage increase. Yeah. So do I understand well that the more realistic number is the 3-point-something%? Rather than 2%?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think Mr. Jackson said it's £3.84 increase per year per household, and if people in the community are asking you, I think in some ways percentages can be confusing, and I think to tell them that it's an worst case scenario, 8p per week per household, or £3.84 per year, and that's the facts. They know how much the pence in their pocket are going to reduce by 8p a week.
Which is nothing, is it? If only people would pay more, local authorities wouldn't be in this situation.
I
It's
think
awful. 7p and people will still be complaining, won't they?
No, there will be, and you can see the difficulties we face, and we're one of the lowest council tax authorities in the I think out of the 250 local district councils. We are very low tax and we provide good value for money. What Councillor Draycott has said is true. If we were allowed to do it, we would not be in a business position. And if we also the supported living and various other things, but the reality is we are in a position, and the finance team have done a very good job, as has been said. But we have got to face what we are presented with. We cannot shy away from it. We have got to deal with it. We do not, without being silly, we don't want to be in the position of other councils who have deferred it, and we haven't done that. We are taking action, and we will do action, and then suddenly cried wolf at the end. And I think Councillor Parsons was trying to make that point, and I'm acutely aware of it. And I'm busy making Cabinet acutely aware of it, and we will, any changes we make will come through scrutiny and Cabinet for you all to see exactly what is proposed. But you're quite right, Councillor Draycott. I agree with you. It would be in an ideal world, if you talk to the man in the street, they would probably be very willing to pay 15p extra, which would make a massive difference to us.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Barclay. I have to raise hands. I think it is Councillor Seaton first. Councillor Seaton.
Yeah, thank you. It's really just to urge caution, Councillor Nicolau, because when a member of the public asks you how much the rates are going up, the council tax is going up, that dates me, doesn't it? And we say it's 7p a week. It's not. Your resident is not bothered about how much Charnwood Borough are increasing it. They're interested in the overall increase. And you've got the police, the social service, the adult in there. You've got the county council tax as well. So all I'm doing is saying, just don't tell somebody it's only raising 7p a week, because it's not. It's raising more than that.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Councillor Seaton's absolutely right. It's the Charnwood Borough Council portion, and the reality of it is some of the town and parish councils have actually got a greater precept than the Borough Council, and certainly the Police and Fire Authority. So yeah, strictly speaking, you're right. But if they're asking about Charnwood, what I said was equivalent. It's bandy equivalent. So you can have somebody who lives in a mansion who will be paying more than 7p because it's converted into a bandy property, and that may be of a value 1.5 times the bandy property, which would mean that they would be paying 11p a week, whereas somebody in a D would be paying 7p, and somebody in a lower band may be actually paying less than 7p a week. So that's how it works. But a very good point by Councillor Seaton.
Thank you very much. I don't see, you see, Councillor Barclay, you still have the hand raised. Okay. I saw Mr. Jackson raising his hand. Was that a forgotten hand?
No,
Mr.
thank you, Chair. I was actually going to raise precisely the same point that Councillor Seaton did, and I think it's, you know, the county council precept on its own is probably 70-ish% of the total of what residents will see on their bill, and that I believe will probably, I haven't seen their reports, but I expect those to increase by 2%, which is the maximum they can raise it by, plus the 2% supplementary adult social care precept. So the county council's council tax, I would very much guess, will be going up by 4%. So 4% on 70% of the total is going to that's going to certainly dwarf any increase that we would put on ours, really. And then again, the police, I think, I can't remember, but they had the ability to raise their council tax by a percentage or up to £12 per Band D property. And just as an aside, if you're a Band D is what we standardise things on. A Band H property, which is a top rate, that pays double Band D, and Band A, which is the lowest, pays 2/3 of Band D. And it actually works on, apart from Band H, it works on fractions of ninth. So if anyone's very interested, I can tell them what how the fractions vary between A to H. But it's Band H is the most expensive council tax, is twice the Band D standard.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. I understand the complexities of taxation, or appreciate it rather than understand. Can I ask a final question if there are no more questions?
Mine's a new hand.
Oh, sorry, it's a new hand.
It's all right. I've only just put it up. And I think this is a convenient time for me to say about training. And I do feel as though the councillors do need training on the council tax and how it is arrived, and you know, the amount of times I'm asked. But I'm a long-serving councillor, and I know it. I know the ins and outs of it. But there's a lot of new councillors that don't, or find it very difficult to explain how Band D is 100%, and then it goes on to 9th, etc. So I'd probably like the Budget Committee to recognise that probably training should be given just purely. The last bout of training that we had, I asked for this to be part of it, and it didn't cover this portion. I think it was the licensing. I forget now, but it was the last training we had, and it was felt that this part of understanding how the council tax is formed didn't comply with it. So I think that training would be good for the councillors on how the council tax is arrived at, and it's not just a sum that's plucked out of the air. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Seaton. I may take this as one of the recommendations for this item, I hope. Am I incorrect, Councillor Seaton? Lovely, thanks. Thank you very much. I don't see any more hands up there. So can I ask one more question, if you don't mind? If I understand well, because of the COVID pandemic, we have lost some income. Am I incorrect in this one?
that's correct. We've lost very substantial amounts of income across a lot of our service lines. So,
how much is that?
I think Leslie will probably remember better than me. I think it was about 2.8 million at a point in time. How close am I, Leslie, with that? Do you remember?
I think you're pretty close, Simon. We did a return at the end of December. What we're actually doing is putting some government returns together, sort of for the 4-month period, and obviously we can claim back a proportion of the income losses. But I think 2.8 is the figure that springs to mind. The thing is, with this, it is a moving target, because obviously it would be perhaps 2.8 at the end of December. Then obviously we've got the new lockdown, that the rules have just come in. So obviously that will then, there'll be more income losses in January, February, but we should be able to claim those income losses back from the government, not 100%, but just another thing. What we have done for the budget for next year is we have anticipated some of those income losses still continuing, like on the car parks. We've put in a budget pressure as a one-off for next year on car parks. We've put in a budget pressure for the leisure centres for next year. So we have actually made some budget assumptions which are embedded in the one-off pressures. They actually total up to 800,000. That's not to be confused with the 800,000 we are getting is a one-off grant. So we have been sort of prudent and very cautious in the budget figures for next year.
Thank you very much. So if I understand well, correct me if I am wrong, these £800,000 are coming, the COVID funding is coming to cover this £2.8 million of loss.
Not specifically. It obviously helps, but there is a separate income compensation scheme. So the 800,000 is essentially earmarked to cover additional costs, and the income compensation scheme is designed to cover losses of income. So they are separate things. We are also getting separate bits and pieces of funding for things like helping support track and trace and community hub, and sort of new burdens funding, as it's called, to cover things like the administration of the business grant. So there are other bits and pieces, but there's two main schemes: are the income compensation scheme, and then the sort of main unring-fenced COVID funding grants, which is Leslie said, that's the 800,000 we're due to receive on that.
Thank you so much. I don't have any other questions, and I don't see any hands being raised. So can we go to the stage of recommendations? So far, I understand there is one pretty solid recommendation by Councillor Seaton about councillors being trained in council tax and other differential taxation. Any other recommendations? Can we put also in the observations, although I don't have this in the running order, that we have lost £2.8 million approximately from our income because of COVID. I think this is very important information to know for future reference. Any other recommendations?
How would that be correct, though? Because some of that has been clawed back, hasn't it?
I think all of that.
Yes.
I think we've dealt with those figures. They're in the report.
Yeah.
As Councillor Seaton said, there's so many variables, right? Just to pick that out. It's all in the budget paper, I would have thought, Chair. It will stand out, I'm sure, for members.
Yeah, I think, you see, I insist in this one because, you see, in every other organization I'm aware of, everybody is looking how much income we have lost because of COVID.
Yeah,
That will be a major question in the future.
it's a good point. Yes.
Thank you. Right. So if there are no more recommendations, I will stick with this recommendation by Councillor Seaton. I don't know whether you want to go through the formal procedure of verbally confirm the recommendations, or if you, I would suggest actually if anybody disagrees with the recommendation to express their disagreement now. Fine. So I take it actually the recommendation is accepted. Right, I'm cautious of time also, and let's go to the final item of today, which is item 7, draft panel report. I'm sure you had actually a look on the report, and we just to clarify a few issues. When we finished actually the last meeting we had, there were no many recommendations, so we agreed to take some time, reflect upon the discussions, and come up actually with a draft report of the budget scrutiny panel. There were quite a few comments, and I have tried actually with Mrs. Conway and Karen also, with the son, just to incorporate all points, everybody's points in this draft report. I'm not going to go through the report. I'm sure actually everybody has read the report so far. For your information, it's page 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. This is the report in the pack you have. One of the major issues we had about this report was in page 15, in paragraph 5, recommendations, item 1. I will read for you actually the first sentence, which in hindsight, I think actually needs to be changed. And the first sentence was, there was a general consensus and strong sentiment among the members of the panel that the Scrutiny Commission and committee's structure should be maintained in its current form and shape. Councillor Draycott raised some concerns about this. And I personally would suggest this sentence to change into, there was a strong sentiment by a number of panel members that the standards of scrutiny should be maintained at a very high level. So we don't really make it very rigid and recommend actually everything to stay in its current form and shape. Another little issue further down in the same report, in again page 15.
Councillor Hadji-Nicolau.
Yes.
I believe Councillor Draycott has her hand raised and would like to comment on what you've just said.
All right, sorry. Again, these hands actually, they're in a yellow background. They're yellow hands, and it's difficult to see in my computer. Councillor Draycott, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and for your comment. So are you saying that the words general consensus should be removed?
Correct.
Because if you are, then I would fully agree with that, because
Correct.
I think that's a more balanced paragraph recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Draycott. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. I don't mind the general consensus words coming out, but I do strongly believe that the Commission and committees should be maintained in their current form and shape. And we had some discussion at the last meeting about the real importance of having the 4 committees, because otherwise the level of scrutiny is very likely to reduce. So I would take exception to watering down the end of that sentence.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I have quite a few hands here. I think Councillor Draco, did you raise your hand again?
No, Chair, sorry, I didn't take it down.
Oh, sorry, and the same for Councillor Bolton, please. Yeah. Mr. Ward, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think the suggestion was made that it might be useful for me to come along tonight to just give a very brief bit of background about the suggestion about scrutiny savings. So the current directorate-based system will have to be reviewed because there have been changes to the directorates. So it cannot stay as it is anyway. Obviously, Scrutiny Commission have paused the 3 directorate committees during COVID as well. And Scrutiny Commission already have on their work programme, I think in March, an opportunity for officers to come back with suggestions about how scrutiny might work moving forward. In advance of that, we started to do a bit of background research. So looking at the district councils in Leicestershire, we have the largest number of standing scrutiny committees. So all of the other districts have 1, 2 or 3, and we have 4. We also have a lot more standing scrutiny committee meetings each year than all of the other districts in Leicestershire, based on largely on us having the 4 standing committees. The panel did also ask for some clarification about savings that scrutiny work has identified over recent years. We don't log those, but it's probably worth noting that not all scrutiny recommendations result in budget savings. Some of them can actually be cost additive. So, for example, if scrutiny recommends that we introduce an extra stage into public consultation, that would be cost additive rather than cost saving. Also, most of the recommendations that arise from scrutiny come from the work of the panels, such as this panel, and other task and finish panels that are established to look at specific topics. There are no proposals to reduce the number of panels, so it will remain at the current level of 4 in operation at any one time, including the annual budget scrutiny panel. And most recommendations that come out of scrutiny come from panels, not from standing committees. There was something else I had on my list, I think. And any changes to scrutiny structure, as I said, would result from the review of the Scrutiny Commission in March, and then would require full council approval. So that's a bit of background, Chair, but obviously happy to answer any questions of detail if that would be helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Mr. Angel, please.
Yeah, just going back to that point I made about page 13 and the 5% increase in council tax. I think we perhaps ought to reword that to talk about something like a proposed £5 increase in council tax.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Angel. Definitely we have to take care of this.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's not terribly relevant to this meeting. I would only suggest that it's probably not appropriate, in my view, that only Scrutiny Commission is involved in effectively doing a scrutiny review. To not have the wider council as involved in that. We ran a scrutiny restructure and review and consultation externally a number of years ago to try to improve scrutiny. And I think it would be an appropriate word, just Scrutiny Commission, be doing that, and we'll have to address that in our own each and individual way to not just have Scrutiny Commission, basically 4 people, 5 people sit down and decide our fate in terms of good scrutiny and what good scrutiny looks like and how it should be structured and who should do it.
Adrian did say it was going to council. Adrian said it was going to council after.
Well, it will. I agree, Councillor Drake. It will go to council, but it will go to council. My guess is with a massive majority of votes behind whatever 4 or 5 people say and decide. So it might well get a debate and an airing at council, but when the vote comes, what goes to council will go through, is my guess, and it will go through without necessarily our contribution has been fully taken into account.
So all members should have some say in the review. I would agree with that.
I think scrutiny cannot be this new structure of scrutiny. Personally speaking, I will go away from here and be ensuring that I lobby appropriately, successfully or otherwise, to not have a very small group of people decide the fate of scrutiny of our council. I don't believe that's appropriate. I don't believe it's democratic, and I don't believe it's to the best benefit. I have no issue with reducing cost, no issue with reducing scrutiny, as long as it's high quality. One of the biggest issues we have, in my view, is that scrutiny at the council is very different to scrutiny in Parliament, where, if I use parliamentary language, backbenchers elect who chairs scrutiny committees. In other words, it's not at the gift or will politically. And I think that when you start to significantly reduce the number of people who have control of scrutiny's agendas, you are in danger of reducing democratic accountability.
So, Chair, could we, I know it's at a very late stage, and I know Nikki doesn't want to change this document very much at all, but could we just make reference to what Adrian has said, especially the bit about that there's going to be a full review in March? And could we perhaps say that the panel's view is there should be an opportunity for all members to be involved in the recommendations that go to council, or something like that, Councillor Parsons?
I don't, personally speaking, Councillor Draycott, if you put that forward as a motion, I couldn't support it, because I don't think that's budget scrutiny panel's place to be putting in our budget scrutiny panel recommendations an issue around the overall scrutiny of the council. I think we're going to have to go away from here. That's why I said it's not necessarily relevant for this meeting.
It's already in there, though. It's already in there as the recommendation.
It is, and it would be a hook to refer to later on, Councillor Parsons.
You understand, I completely agree with the sentiment, Councillor Draycott. I'm just not sure it fits appropriately in this way into a budget scrutiny panel scrutinising the 2021-22 budget. For us to be making that recommendation, that's just my personal view. This isn't the place for that recommendation to be. It doesn't feel right to me in the budget scrutiny panel context, but I am absolutely in favour of making lobbying, doing what now needs to be done to ensure that a very small handful of people are lobbied appropriately to make sure our voice as councillors is heard widely with regard to not reducing transparency and democratic accountability in our council.
Well, I think if we don't do that now, that's exactly what will happen, Councillor Parsons.
I must admit, I'm struggling to understand, in the sense that the first recommendation is to do with the number of scrutiny committees and the business to do with the benefit of scrutiny. And that was originally agreed, I think, in the light of wanting to ensure that scrutiny in general and scrutiny of budget was maintained.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But it's done,
whether that's a reduction of committees or not.
It's done from the angle of cost.
Yeah.
That sentence was brought to us, and that issue was brought to us from the perspective of cost. So as I remember the process that went through, one of the things that came to this panel was to reduce the number of scrutiny panels by 2 to save £10,000 circa. Now, that in itself is something we can say, no, we don't agree that that's £10,000 well saved. I think we are legitimately within our rights to say that, and that's in effect what's tried to be captured in point 1. I don't think it's legitimate for us to then go on and have a recommendation in the budget scrutiny panel, which now goes to the much wider brief of the entire scrutiny structure of our council. I don't think that's appropriate. It's just my personal view.
Okay. From a panel perspective, whatever recommendations you come up with are your recommendations, but that's for your panel to decide on what you want to do in terms of that particular issue.
Yeah, just following on from Councillor Parsons, that was the position at the last meeting, but now tonight we've had further information, and the fact that there's going to be a review in March may help people either come to terms with this or not, right? I just think this is an opportunity, whereas we can make a comment on this matter that might help ensure that scrutiny does work effectively after March. But we can put that to the meeting, I suggest, and just see what people feel.
thank you very much for your comments. I just want to clarify one thing. This is a draft document, and actually this item is about making amendments on this draft document.
Yeah.
And that's why you see I'm sticking with this recommendation paragraph, the item 1 in the recommendations. And we have already agreed that actually the general consensus will be removed, and we just stay with a strong sentiment. The issue actually raised first of all by Councillor Bolton is whether we are going to change this particular sentence, because in that particular statement we say in the draft report, the commission and committee structure should be maintained in its current form and shape. Now, on the other hand, what I said, actually, what I suggest as an amendment is actually just to emphasize that we need to maintain the high standard level of scrutiny. Definitely, Mr. Ward added some new information that there will be a revision of the scrutiny process and the scrutiny committees in March. And this may need to be added as an additional sentence in this item 1, because definitely is new information. So if it is to stay actually with the commission and committee structure should be maintained in its current form and shape, we should say should be ideally.
Lost the chair.
Oh,
back.
Sorry, the computer is playing today. Should be ideally maintained in its current form and shape. But then we can add.
Chair, sorry, Chair, could I see some clarification? Because obviously I'm going to be the officer that's effectively supporting Scrutiny Commission with the review. I think I agree with Nikki Conway. I can't see any difference between this panel recommending that the scrutiny structure should stay in exactly its current form and shape, although, as I explained, it can't anyway, because there have been changes to directorates, and making the recommendation that Councillor Parsons was suggesting, that members should, if this panel is recommending there should be no changes to scrutiny, you are already getting yourself involved in the scrutiny review as a panel and expressing an opinion as a panel. I can't see any difference between that and expressing another opinion that members should be widely consulted as part of the review, Chair. I'm struggling with that.
So to try and save time, Chair, if perhaps it needs moving formally or whichever way you want to take the vote, but if we're agreeing then that the words general consensus be removed and that a new sentence be added, taking account of the new information from Adrian tonight, and that there's going to be a review in March where all members should be able to participate in the forming of the report that goes to council. As I think that's what we can do, and I think that's what we should be doing in view of the new information we've been given, Chair. Can be just one sentence at the end.
I do not disagree with this one, and I think that's a pretty reasonable thing to do, just to add the additional information, remove the general consensus, and keep the paragraph as it is otherwise.
Yeah.
Should we go through a formal vote for this? Sorry, Councillor Seaton. Councillor Seaton? Brenda? Hello?
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to formally move it as a request, because I don't really know what the tripping point is here. It's the recommendation of this committee that any changes in scrutiny need to be open for all members to have an input. So that was all. It was just really to formalise
Yeah.
it, but Councillor Drake already. Sorry,
Yeah,
Bob.
that's been moved and Councillor Seaton's okay to second it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's
Can I
fine. So
clarify what exactly you're changing then in terms of the recommendation? So you're changing the sentence to say there was a strong sentiment amongst the members of the panel that the Scrutiny Commission and committee structure should be maintained in its current form and shape.
However,
because
in view of the new information supplied at this meeting by Adrian Ward, and the fact that the likelihood is there'll be a full review in March of the scrutiny system, the panel feels that if that happens, all members of the council should be able to participate in the formation of the report that goes to council.
I'm sure that could be shortened.
Yeah, and tidied up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
sure it can be
Yeah.
shortened.
I think we all understand the spirit
Yeah.
of the statement.
Is that all right, Nikki?
if you're happy for me to go away and have a go at shortening it, I
Yes,
think I've
yeah.
got the gist of what it is that you're wanting to put in that statement.
I don't want it to get lost in words and
No.
confused.
No, it is.
Okay.
It is. I think the spirit of this statement is quite clear. Do you want to actually to put it to a vote?
Is there anybody against? That would speed it up, Chair.
Yeah, I think actually this is the best process. Is anybody who disagrees with this amendment?
Well, I would abstain given the option, Chair.
Yeah, I disagree.
Sorry, then we better go actually through a formal process of voting then. And then I have to go through each individual member of the panel.
Is there any comments that Councillor Bolton or Councillor Parsons wish to make, and are they happy if it was to vote through as a majority for their views to sort of not be part of
recommendation? What are the reasons for this? For
Look,
Councillor
I don't
Parsons
think
abstaining?
I don't think I have to give a reason as to why. I'm against it.
It might support us. You might come up with a reason that we didn't think of and make us rethink.
I'd rather just put it to a vote, please. It's
I would agree with Councillor Bolton in this case. It is, you don't really need to give a reason, and I think the best thing to follow formal process. So I will call every member of the panel to cast their vote in this issue, and I will start with Councillor Bolton.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Draycott.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Parsons.
Abstain.
Thank you. And Councillor Seaton.
For.
Thank you. So we have actually four.
Haji Nicolau, you also need to vote.
Oh, sorry, I forgot about myself. Happens 7 days. I will go 4 too. So counting here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yes, 1 no, and 1 abstain. Can we please include this one, Ms. Conway, in the minutes?
Yes, I will do.
Thank you very much. Right, I think that was possibly the most important part of the draft report. Now, the rest, I'm sure you have read it, and I wonder whether you have any comments in the recommendations or the observations. I'm afraid actually I forgot to say something about the observations in page 17, item 9, about the Loughborough Town Hall. Definitely we need to change actually the second sentence if Charnwood continues to be in tier 3. With the new developments, I would suggest actually to put if Charnwood continues under COVID restrictions. Because now we are in tier 4 or 5 or God knows what year we're in. These things change all the time. And this is a logical thing to correct here.
So
So
it's current, Comey, the current
yeah,
one.
the current, yeah, absolutely current COVID restrictions. Lovely. So this is my only comments on this report, and I'll be delighted if I have your feedback. If you have any other suggestions for amendments. So if there are no suggestions for amendments, should we, I need to ask actually Ms. Conway at this stage, do we go for another vote? Or we account the previous vote as a vote for the entire draft?
I think it's probably worth checking that everybody's happy with the panel report as it is fully drafted now, or whether, so just sort of checking that it has got the full backing of the panel. If it doesn't have the full backing of the panel, then you either need to discuss further what needs to be changed, or you can consider doing a minority report where if the councillors that were not keen to support this panel report can put another report forward with their views.
Thank you very much, Ms. Conway. So, you see, we have the vote for this particular aspect, but of course, you see, we need actually to express our opinion for the full report. So I'm afraid I have to call another vote for the full report, if you don't mind. So I may, if there are any questions now, no, fine. So may I call the names of the members of the panel again one more time, whether we have your backing for the full report.
This is for the amended report, yeah.
The amended, yes, the amended full report. So I will call Councillor Bolton.
In favour, with the exception of what I said earlier, but overall I think the report is balanced and okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Draycott.
For, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamilton.
For.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons. Councillor Parsons.
For.
Thank you. And Councillor Seaton.
For.
Thank you very much. Right. And any comments from our officers? Thank you so much. Right. I'm afraid I have to close this meeting. You are going to be very happy about this after 2 hours, approximately. I would like to give a big thank you for all your work and all your effort for the members of the panel, the officers, and also Councillor Barclay. And if we don't have anything else, I will close this meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening.